So, um, first of all, thank you for having us here. It's a big honor for me to be here with this incredible people who we are discussing the topic of future of magic, which is, of course, very simple and easy topic to to deal in 1 hour. Um, so. Well, first of all, perhaps you know these people very well. Valentine Lasso, she was one of the founding members of 14 company, 1420 in France, who initiated and developed the term new magic in France, and who has been like a huge influence how the magic has become part of the contemporary circus, especially in France, but also other around the world. And then we have Luis de Matos, who's the most famous magician from Portugal and sort of a legend in the field of magic, who has performed in probably hundreds of big theaters around the globe and spent hundreds of hours in television performing his illusions. So it's a big honor to have them both here. But talking about future of magic, I would actually love us to dive directly into the deep end of the topic by first trying to define a little bit what we are talking about when we are talking about magic. Because as we know, we are in our society, we are constantly surrounded by phenomena and things that we can't really explain. Like we have cell phones, we have airplanes, we have refrigerators, and none of us really knows how they work. So it's like full of miracles, the world we are living in. But still, we don't find them to be magic. So for me, very interesting question is like, what makes something magic? And perhaps maybe if Luis has a point of view.
Good morning, my dear fellow members of this panel. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see magic involved with circus and in such an innovative way. And of course, as a magician, I am very happy to see that happening. Regarding the future of magic, the good news is that magic has a future. That is good. I think that it's very interesting to see the evolution curve of magic and how magicians have always be ahead of their times, in a way prototyping the future. And that is the biggest contribution of magic to the entertainment world, to the art world, and to the world in general. The first recorded not in video, but as a record, the first ever performing art to be historically recorded was a magic show. Before dance and theater and everything else. And this happened 2,500 years ago before Christ. And it's on papyrus, Westcar papyrus, and it's the oldest formal setting of a show, till something older is found. Now, I believe that when magicians prototype the future, what they do is that they take dreams of humankind and they fake that they are really happening, till the humankind is able to actually make them happen. So we don't need to make things for real, we just need to create the illusion that dreams of the humankind are actually materialized before its time. It's what happened with Georges Méliès, with the trip to the moon, a magician that invented cinema. It's what happened with the chess player. The chess player was the precursor of the invention of the computer. And it started with a trick. There was a performance of the chess player, which is was sold as an automata, which was not really an automata. That was the fake part. That was the illusion part. But on this Viennese show, private show, a guy called Charles Babbage, which later invented the computer, went home that night inventing the computer because he saw a magic show. And this is what happens, is that today we create the illusion that I can disappear from here and appear on the other side of the street. Probably one day science is going to be able to do that. And that is the exact same smile that I saw my grandmother making when I said it would be great if we could talk to people across the countries. And she reacted like, yeah, right, yeah. Right. Sure. So anyway, I could go on and on, but I think it's better if we becomes more...
Magic as the creator of dreams. How about you, Valentin? How do you see it?
Yeah, magic is maybe the art form that challenges the most our common definition of reality. And as long as our society will keep thinking about what is real and what is the definition of the real world we are all sharing together, I think magic has a great future. But we should also think that not all the people on this earth share the same definition of what is real and what is not. And as a magician and an anthropologist, I have been experimenting this by performing magic tricks in diverse contexts all around the world. And I was amazed to discover that in a Mayan group I've been working with since like 12 years, a group of hundreds of people living in the rainforest in Mexico. They, for instance, have absolutely no interest in any kind of levitation tricks. So you can make anything float. So I was performing with leaves, stones, or things I found in the jungle, and showing that kind of tricks to them. I realized that they had not any kind of interest in this. But of course, if I were performing, or if Louis were performing it right now, I think it would be a hit, a huge hit. But in this place, it was completely different. And on the contrary, more simple tricks that we know of here were considered very powerful, very strange, and very bizarre to them. So I think this definition of reality is very diverse, and maybe the future of magic would be interested in getting some inspiration from these diverse definitions of reality from all around the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting concept. But if we talk about the definition of magic, and when we are here, we are talking all the time about the new magic or magic novel. Could you also open up that concept a little bit for us?
Well, Magie Nouvelle is an art movement, as you presented it, that we came along with Clément de Bailleul and Raphaël Navarro, two other French magicians, and we met all together. Oh.
Magic.
Is it a magic sign? At lunchtime. At this moment, we were all magicians, performing tricks and trying to improve our skills in magic, and we wanted to invite other artists from other backgrounds in the field of magic, because magic has been for decades a very closed world because of the secrecy of the techniques we use, which is a very important part in our lives as artists. It's very different from painters or musicians. Everything we have to learn it from secret practices, and sometimes they are very protected for centuries of secrecy. So the difficulty we found when we were young artists in magic was to broaden the circle of magic and invite other artists from different backgrounds, and even not all the time artists or artists considered people, like cooks, for instance, or I don't know, hair designers or costume designers, because magic actually is not only a discipline, an artistic discipline, it's also, and first of all, I think it's a feeling, it's an emotion. So the word magic, it defines something which is much bigger than the art practice, the art form of magic. So I think the idea of the new magic was to reconnect with this feeling and to broaden the artists that could participate in and that could bring their own creative backgrounds to this wonderful discipline, which is one of the oldest of the humankind, which known today.
Yeah, I think the openness that the magic novel is very new. If we think about the magic in 90s, there became this TV show called Masked Magician. I'm sure you remember the show where a magician was exposing the tricks in TV, and I think the community of magicians were really shocked, and there were a lot of discussion during that time in magic that is this the end of the magic? Like, how can we survive? What can we do now? Everything is exposed, and I think it's really curious to see. Like now, there are times like all the secrets are obviously available to everybody. Like you can just Google almost any trick, and you can find the secrets to that. But still, magic is going perhaps stronger than ever. How do you see, Luis, the importance of secrecy in magic?
I think that's the biggest handicap of magic. I think there should be no secrets at all. For me, I was on TV and I was doing a tour in Portugal when The Masked Magician was on, and that has no impact because it's boring. It's just boring. I mean, I was analyzing the ratings on TV, and I did a study on ratings. What was interesting is that at the beginning there was a peak, so lots. Oh yeah, it's going to reveal, and then okay, reveal. Okay, great. Yeah, boring, pathetic, ridiculous. Okay, now the next one, and then people tune off, and that's why they didn't do more shows. That's the only reason. It's simply boring, like it would be boring to have a revelation of secrets of any other area. Now, American writer Jim Steinmeier published a book with a very suggestive title, and he says, magicians are keeping an empty safe. And yes, it's an empty, because a secret is nothing. First of all, in the performing arts, the best story wins. That's it. It's the best story, the best emotion, the best feeling, the best. It's not about, oh yeah, the guy is terrible, but wow, that technique is so clever. So it makes no sense. I also believe that the secret, it's what has been kept magic behind. Let's see this timeline. 2,500 years ago, magic was documented as a show with details, which were the 3 tricks performed by this magician 2,500 years ago. Now, 5,000 years pass by. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to tell me compare the evolution curve of magic, comparing the repertoire 2,500 years ago with what is being done today. But a few years ago, a French guy, magician, invented cinema. And when you look at the evolution curve of cinema, it's rocking, and magic is still there. The only reason is because we hide secrets. So we don't open the doors to more people, just by curiosity, get involved and invest the creativity and the talent and everything and their time into developing this. But if we believe that secret is important, puts us magicians in a ridiculous position, which is simply because of the fact that I know something that you do not know, you should applaud me. And that's not the reality. I know stuff that you are not interested in, and because a friend told me this and this, oh, please keep a secret. And that does not give me the right to have a standing ovation just because I know that secret. So actually knowing secret is meaningless. And I honestly believe that if I had no idea how a grand piano worked, and I went to see, and we are in Portugal, so I'm going to say Pedro Brunhosa and Pedro Burmester and Mario Laginha, if I never saw a grand piano in my life, and I went to see their virtuoso concert, I would not care about their performance. I would be constantly puzzled by the fact that how does that thing that looks like a piece of furniture I have in my room to put shirts on produces amazing sounds. Now, because I know that there are keys and hammers and strings and the special shape tuned in a special way, now I am relaxed and I can enjoy the virtuoso. And I can enjoy the performance, and I can say, oh, this one is better than this one, or this creates me a different emotion than this other guy, so I'm going to see this guy again. Now, when people come to my show, they don't know if what they have seen is the result of pressing a button, or working very hard, or is done by me, or is done by 50 people backstage. When I say, I try to go against this. So when I say my show, I say when people go to see a magic show in general. And I think that's very sad. People should know more because they would value more. We have a friend, and you know, I don't know if he's your friend, Ho-Jin. Okay, so Ho-Jin is a young guy from South Korea. And I don't know, so I'm sure that some people in the audience, first of all, they don't see the secret. Then they don't know if that's hard or easy. They don't know. They have no. We know it's very hard, but the audience doesn't know. He only wins because he's able to transport us to a different world, and that's where the best story wins, or the best feeling, or the best aesthetic wins.
But if
Oh, just to say, I completely agree with Luis, of course, but it's like a challenge for us magicians to rely too much on the secrecy of our techniques, because not knowing how it works is not enough to provoke, to create this emotion, this artistic emotion, which is completely specific to magic, as you mentioned before. We don't know. Most of us don't know how our cell phone works, and many things of our common life is not something that we know of, or we have a clear idea of how it works. Thus, we are not touched each time we pick up our phone and send a message or answer it. And a very clever way of thinking the future of magic is also to look deep into the past. And I would just like to add that in our contemporary world, we have this huge inheritance from the Middle Ages, and we have to remember that magic as an art form has been more or less prohibited for like 800 years, like from basically the 13th century to the 19th century in some parts of the world. Magic as an art form has been prohibited by religious pressure, and it's still the case today in many parts of the world. So maybe this is why secrecy have played an important part in in the protection of our art form, but maybe this need for secrecy and for protection is no longer existing in the contemporary art world.
On this tone, I mean, when Reginald Scott wrote one of the very first books in magic, 16th century, which was, the name was Discovery of Witchcraft. He was just exposing secrets and say, please do not burn these people because they do it this way. They do it with a thread and with a fake knife, and the head is under the table. He was exposing everything. Of course, King James did not agree and thought that this was fake and got him killed and the books burned. People love to keep it as a mystery that way. But secrets have been an enemy of magic. And I think the worst manifestation of secrets being an enemy comes to something that I say quite often and annoyed some magicians. But that's, I believe, magician is the only art form where you can lie about your talent. Because you can have zero talent and still get a standing ovation. Because it's based on this, I know something you don't know and therefore I surprise you. And that's what Valentin was saying. I don't know how my phone works and I don't care. So people need to care. We need to make them care.
You mentioned that stories are perhaps the way to make people care, but that brings us into the question of dramaturgy of magic. So, for instance, if we think about the trick of flying or trick of levitation, there's the famous example of we have David Copperfield flying and people are, it's magic, and then we have Peter Pan flying with almost the same technique, but people think that, okay, it's part of the theater techniques and it's not really magic. And there are of course many examples of this, and perhaps this, like thinking about the dramaturgy and magic. One very nice example is from book Our Magic by Maskelyne and Devant. It was written in 1911, and there they are discussing the dramaturgy of magic, and they come into somehow of this conclusion that combining the drama with magic is difficult, because if the story is good enough, people don't care about the tricks, and if the tricks are good enough, people don't care about the story. Which I think in many cases it can be like that. And how's your point of view into that? And what could be the other ways of bringing something else into magic?
I think Maskelyne and Devant's Our Magic book is probably still today the most relevant book on magic ever written.
I agree, yeah.
So it's 1911, but it would still be a classic for today's, nowadays magicians. Though I kind of disagree with them in this specific point. I wouldn't say that, because the idea is if you have, for instance, you make a disappearance trick, you make someone disappear. You can perform it as a magician, like a performance of a skill you have. You can make this, you know how to, or you worked a lot with your team to make this illusion possible. Or you can use this disappearance trick to represent a narrative world in which disappearing persons is completely normal. So on stage, on the narrative, from the narrative point of view, it would be completely normal, but thus for the spectators, it would still be something completely unusual. And I don't think that people would stop to care for this magic happening on stage if it is brought inside the story. On the contrary, I think the power of this could be enhanced by the dramaturgy and by the affect that a narrative can create with people. So what you won't have if you perform this magic trick in this way is a standing ovation, an immediate standing ovation for this disappearance. But it doesn't mean that it wouldn't have a huge artistic, emotional impact on the spectators. And there is maybe a third way, which has not been that much used by magicians, is to use magic as a poetic, in the ancient Greek sense of the word, a poetic tool. That means a dramatic, a narrative tool. For instance, you could use this disappearance not to represent or to figure someone who is dissolving into the thin air, but in order to make, for instance, a change in the set for on your show. So you want to change sets, and instead of turning the stage black and making this technical change, well, you will use a disappearance of some part of the stage, and then the appearance of someone else talking on another part of the stage. It is like a tool for writing, a creative narrative tool, and this kind of writing in magic hasn't been used a lot by magicians, but I see it more and more coming up in new magic field with young artists discovering magic, and they ask me how to make that kind of change, to use magic as an indirect tool to create a constant world of transformation, metamorphosis in their shows, more than to represent something actually magic happening on the stage.
How do you see is it possible to combine drama with magic?
I think it is possible. I think should not be an obsession. I think should not be this is right and this is wrong. I think sorry. I don't think that all magic is art. Like not all music is art, and not all painting are art, not all writing is art. So I always refrain from saying, oh, because dance is an art form. Oh, I see some people dancing and there's no art there. Okay, so we should judge if, or have an opinion, a personal opinion, on specific things. I saw movies that there was no art there. And that's fine. I would watch them again. I'm not saying it's bad. So, and we should not be snobbish about entertainment for entertainment, because that's part of our story. We all love to be entertained, but it's such a rich tree that all the branches are part of this. So I always refrain from movements that somehow try to wipe blank everything behind and say, because this is the deal now. No, it's not. You haven't lived long enough, and even if throughout your entire life, you will not have the authority to say this is the big change. Others will judge that. In 100 years, people will judge if that was really a movement or not, if it changed for better or for worse. So we should not be advocate in our own areas. But yes, dramaturgy is very much part of everything magicians do. Sometimes they are aware of it, sometimes they are not. Because even if there is no story to tell, the spectator is going to write a story. So, and that's not a good thing, to publish a book that has white pages and whoever buys it writes their own story, especially if it is signed by us. So I think we should be in control of the story, whether there is one or there's just a very light shade of dramaturgic language. And also, not all the time the story is visible in big, bold letters. Sometimes it's an inner dialogue. And some people see it superficially, just as entertainment and with lack of stories. Some people go beyond and they find the real story, or some people find their own stories, and that's fine. When I saw Slava Snow Show many times. But when I first saw the show, I didn't know that was the story of his own depression. And it was a great show. And there was no story for me the first time I saw it. Then I learned more about, then I met the guy, then and oh, that's clever. Oh, that's much more powerful. Yes, but we should not be so contrived with rules like it must have. This is good, this is wrong. Anyway.
That's an interesting part of masculine and deviant approach. They were magicians, very, very talented magicians, and they were thinking about this question of dramaturgy in magic and questioning, exactly like contemporary circus have made this constant dialogue between performance and dramaturgy or storytelling or assuming a pure performance shows. It's very interesting, and I think the key in this kind of reflection is to separate entertainment from performance, because entertainment can happen in any kind of, in any style of any show possible. You can be entertained at a very classical opera as you can be entertained in a very popular musical show. So the question would be more how to write performance within magic tools we have, and this is a question that links circus and magic to me in the contemporary writing. How do we deal with performance, and what do we do from an artistic point of view with this idea of performing?
It is very, what I find about magic is very particular, is the way it deals with reality. I think it's something that is very hard to achieve in different art forms, is that, like, if we think different styles or different schools of magic, we have these big productions with theatrical elements, but then in the other end of the spectrum there is perhaps the style which is very nicely written down by Paul Harris in his book Art of Astonishment, and later on made very famous by David Blaine, by kind of like cutting the performative elements as small as possible, kind of like diminishing the performance into very much into the core of the effect, and kind of like giving as much as space to the effect. That was really, it's really interesting to see when we watch the history of contemporary or modern magic, like how much different performers and different styles have influenced. Like, of course, like David Blaine was very super influential, how the whole magic developed at that time, and before that David Copperfield, and well, we have lots of names we could mention. At the time we are living in, have you noticed some sort of like movements or styles or things that you think are going to be for the future? Something we notice.
Well, I think during COVID-19, magicians have been very creative, and I would say they have been even more creative than many of other discipline artists, reinventing new forms of representation, like visio shows, and creating a whole new repertoire of tricks that could be made especially for the camera, with people watching them from home. And we have seen this flourishing movement of new shows and new contact, that would take this constraint, this difficulty of not being there in contact with the public, and thus creating this feeling of a diversion of reality, but at home, with people at home, and not being in direct contact with them. So this is one movement, one very recent movement that I've seen, and I've been amazed by this creativity lately. I don't know if magicians will follow on this, but it has been super inspiring, I think, for all art forms to reinvent the contract between audiences and artists through this amazing creative constraint that the COVID-19 situation has been for many artists.
On this front, which I totally agree, first of all, magicians are problem solvers. They have an idea for an effect, which it's an impossible thing, which will create the suspension of disbelief and create astonishment on their audiences, and then they need to solve the problem. Solving the problem is to make that thing happen under full scrutiny of the eyes. This gives training and helps progress. For example, I mentioned before the inventor of cinema. I should also mention, in this case, the inventor of the clapperboard, which was another magician called the Great Leon. Again, he was solving a problem. And was the solving problem training that was the target of the invention of the clapperboard, because an Australian guy used to synchronize audio by holding two sticks, and you had two sticks and they go clank, and there was another guy that would hold a slate saying what is the take, and the Great Leon said, "Ha ha." And he invented the clapperboard. Again, problem solving. I totally agree that the pandemic was an immense and effective trigger on the magic world in a higher speed and with an incredible rate of results that have not been seen in any other performing area, entertainment area, or pure art area. Myself, with my team here in Portugal, during the pandemic, we created 3 different projects on the first year, things we never did before. We transformed our studio theater into a drive-in venue. So I did drive-in magic shows, and I invite all 10 or 12 other Portuguese stars, music, Abrunhosa, Carolina Deslandes, you name it. It was comedians, and so we immediately, during lockdown, where everything was forbidden, we were the only open venue in Portugal because there was no legislation. Also because people were allowed to stay at home in the family. They were allowed to get in the car in the family, drive around, and go home. So we looked at this pattern and we said, yeah, so we are legal. We can do it. Just out of curiosity, I called the Minister of Culture and said, oh yeah, this idea, I'm going to do it. Oh yeah, that's great. I said, oh, and Pedro Brunhosa is going to be on the 23rd of May. Don't even think of doing that. Only after lockdown is taken away. I said, okay. And the moment I hang the phone, I told my team, yep, we'll do it on the 23rd. And we did, and nothing happened because we were doing nothing wrong. But anyway, so we did that, the drive-in. We would never have come up with the drive-in idea before.
How was the experience? Tell me a little bit about like a driving performance.
Yeah, well, we have our studio. It's in the center of Portugal. Everybody's invited to go there. And it's 10,000 square meters of theater. The stage replicates the stage, and I don't know what to call the teia and the subpalco. But anyway, it's like... Yes, I will keep it short. Don't worry, it's okay. So it's a replication of the stage of Teatro Nacional São João, and we have a parking lot and the garden, and we use the entire building as video mapping as a background for the different scenes of the different shows, and people would come in, they buy the ticket, they give us the license plate and the car, and everything was ready, and everything was super safe. So that was one of the things. The second thing was we did a really hybrid show, like I have not seen anyone doing a hybrid show. The only reason we were not clever. We were just the reason why we create such an original concept is because I was stupid. It was not out of cleverness. It's because I wrongly understood the meaning of a hybrid event. Well, people call hybrid events to things that happen here and are also streamed. Okay, like football. Football has been a hybrid event for the last 100 years. They can see it in the stadium, or they can see it in front of the TV. I didn't understand it this way. I thought it was something new and different. So I understood that a hybrid event would be an event where people at the theater and at home could interact during the show, with the show, and change the show. And that's what we have done. It's called Os Matos Conectados. We did it at Coliseu do Porto. Monica is there. Yeah, there you go. And the thing is that the way it was done is that people buying tickets to go and watch it live, they would get free access to offer to their friends and families. But people at home would actually participate and be part of the set and enjoy and decide and talk to people in the studio. So that's the second thing in the first year. And the third idea was to do a hybrid show. A virtual show, which we took. We didn't jump immediately in the bandwagon of virtual shows because we didn't want to do. I think magicians did a great thing and a bad thing. Magicians were the first ones doing virtual shows, but the first ones giving them a bad name as well, because they say, "Oh, it's easy. I do the same thing I always have done. I just open my computer and I do it here from the corner of my bedroom." So they were the first ones coming out, and then so we wait a year, and then we did what we thought was the best we could do virtual show.
Valentin, your company, you also had a different approach to approach COVID. Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, we created an hologram show, completely performed by holograms. We've been working with holograms since 15 years, but we never use holograms as a representation of holograms. So for instance, we would have a dancer on stage dancing and leaving some traces of her body, like immaterial traces floating in the air, then vanishing. We have to use the hologram technique in order to represent and to perform this, but the spectators, they have no clue at all. And they come with a crazy explanation, like you're using uranium powder to make the show, or some spectators, they come up with hypnosis, or like you hypnotized us, and that's what we thought we saw something, but we didn't saw it actually. So this is a kind of an indirect use of magic techniques that we love to use in Magie Nouvelle in general, but any magician has more or less worked with that kind of approach. And during COVID-19, I changed my mind about holograms, because my question was, I have been very traumatized by a moment in France when even the rehearsals were prohibited. So you could have only, or the rules were completely crazy, like you could have only one person on stage, and the other persons had to be in separate rooms with one room separated between each room. So it was completely impossible to work for artists, even to prepare the shows that would be performed later. So this absence, this total absence of physical reality on stage, I wondered, is it possible to feel the presence of an artist or any kind of person on stage, even if this person is not here? And I had a guess that it would be possible, because we all have experienced this feeling of presence of someone caught on a camera, on an old picture, someone we don't know, someone who died like 100 years ago, but still capture your feelings when you see his or her picture, or when you see an actor in an old movie. You can have this feeling of presence, which is very powerful. So my guess was that it would be possible. So I I worked with an entire show performed by holograms. I have been writing some short acts for different artists I love. And we've been creating this. The idea was to go against the streaming of shows that developed a lot during COVID-19. At least in France, I don't know elsewhere, but we had a lot of shows streamed, and something was off always when we watched this. It is like no feeling at all, no emotion at all, something that works very well on stage, on live performance. It's a completely different experience when you see it on video and sometimes have no feeling about it. So I wanted to combine the streaming possibilities with the hologram technique. And we rewrote a completely magical act asking artists, what would you do if you were a hologram? What is something that you've been dreaming of in your career but have never done, because this person we invited, except Jan Frisch, were not magicians. They were singers, jugglers, circus artists, opera singers, etc. So we wrote some magic acts and we put it all together in a small show. And the idea was to tour it in using a whole illusion called the Ames room. It's an illusion. It's a shame I didn't came with any picture of it, but I will try to describe it to you. Like you see sometimes pictures of two persons. One is looking super big and the other super small, super tiny. And it's just an anamorphosis. So they are in the same room, but actually one is closer to the camera than the other one. And it's an interesting illusion of scale. In real life. So I constructed a very small theater with this illusion in order to recreate the feeling that you are in an actual theater watching a real size show, but actually the holograms, they're this high. And it's a very simple set with a very small lamp and a chair, and they can sit in the chair, interact with the lights, etc. And this show has been touring in hospitals, in places that are disconnected from the cultural world in general, not only during pandemic, but also all the rest of the years. So that's how we tried to bring a creative response to this constraint, to this very impossible situation for artists during COVID. And it is still touring, actually.
It's interesting. It's like magic without magician, sort of holograms and robots taking our jobs. Like, is it? But like, it's very curious. I'm interested about the relationship of magician. Like for instance, Thierry Collet in France, he's doing a project with machines performing magic. Like they are some sort of. I haven't actually seen them. I'm just talking with him and he explained that it's like a sort of like a voting booth where there's a computer inside and it performs magic for the people. Do you think it's like does magic generally need a magician, or is it possible to do magic without magicians?
Well, I think the reason why that is so relevant is because it's a novelty, and because it's different enough. And it probably will, I mean, Marco Tempest did that with a robot 12 years ago. And the robot was performing magic. And then Simon Pierro, so yeah. And the reason why Marco Tempest ended up being one of the consultants at MIT is because of his side of being a problem solver. So the question is that there magic without magicians. Well, there are a lot of magic that does not involve magicians, but there's not the magic we are talking about. It's like, as Valentin was saying before, magic as a greater concept, as a greater idea. And I believe also that with the fast pace growing of the technology presence in our lives, we need to take a different approach. We need to take a more simple approach, a more human approach, because I think what becomes magnetic on the magic performance is that one of my species is doing something that I cannot duplicate. And that's the attractiveness. That's why and other animals don't look at our magic as interested.
But it's funny, I saw last week there was advertisement of a mentalism act that was presented in New York, and they have in their advertisement that if anybody can catch them using any technology, they will pay them like $100,000 or whatever. So they are kind of like really saying that we are definitely not using any technology, which is how is it with the technology and magic? Can they be combined somehow, still having the magic in it, or is it?
Oh yes, I mean Valentin gave an example of the use of the technology behind what people call holograms, which is called hologos. It's a modern way of doing Pepper's Ghost. And as Valentin was using hologos to create this uranium dust, probably explained by others, I was using hologram to do something completely different. So I was using for this hybrid show. I took some. I took language that we usually use on stage and tried to make it translate over the screen. The same way I took some things that usually use a TV language and wanted them to translate to a live setting because it was a hybrid show. So this is an example. There is this old not old, but it's a new language that was invented by Max Maven in the 70s, where you touch the screen and your finger goes around and then there is an outcome that is surprising for you at home. So I was using one of those with the 14 hosts from Radio Comercial, and it was easy to do it for the people at home because that is, by definition, a TV trick, a trick to be done on a screen. So I did it at the same time on a screen for people at home, but in front of me on the theater there was the hologram of the actual circles of the 14th guy, and I would point to them and erase them and all of these things. Or another way would be another use of that, and I will conclude why I'm saying this is. In the European tour of 2018 with the Illusionist show, we were opening the show with some sort of, again, holograms with everyone appearing, and I would fly and go to each one and turn them around. This to say that magicians are good at taking one piece of technology. It can be a screwdriver, it can be a Wi-Fi router. Taking them, putting them at doing the job that they needed to be done, and because it's out of context, it's not used to access the internet, it's not used to screw something, it's used for something else, suddenly helps us as tools to make possible the impossibility that we are set to create on stage.
I would agree with Louis. Also, that the idea that the holograms. Oh, by the way, we are not using hologos. Oh, Louis, sorry for that. This is another technique, but this is of course inspired by the classical Pepper's Ghost, which is a super ancient. It was maybe considered technology in the 19th century, but it's the most simple thing in the world. It has an image of something technologic, but this is actually not. Actually, the first traces of hologram research are from the 1st century after Christ. So it's a very ancient technique. Actually, we're using it. I wouldn't speak of technology regarding holograms, but to come back to the idea of the magic without magicians, maybe this has this not has always to see with technology or with this kind of. This is more on how you want to write your magic. For instance, in the company 1420, we've been working with levitation, a classical flying act, but it was created for a dancer on stage, and actually there was no magician on stage, like performing the magic trick, like saying, I'm the reason why this person is floating or levitating on stage. But they were magicians. We were here, so people actually, they knew that we are a company of magic, and we were the reason for this flying act to happen on stage. So it's not so much magic without magicians, but where do you place the performative reason for this magic to happen? And this is a very important question also for contemporary circus. Where is the place for the performer within the art process or the entertaining process? So in this case, we just wanted to have a feeling of empathy, like we wanted the spectator to feel like they could float through this dancer on stage. It would provoke another kind of emotion that if we have put a magician on stage making this person float. So I think the kind of emotion we were seeking were different, but it's just what kind of emotion do you want to provoke? Is it, I don't know how to say it in English, maybe astonishment, surprise, or another kind of feeling of empathy, or do you want to make the magic seems fluid and normal and smooth, or on the contrary, do you want it to be very astonishing in a normal environment on stage? So the magic with that magician is not so much a question. It would be more what kind of emotion can magic create, and there are many possibilities.
Yeah, that's a good point. The time we are living now, it's we could say that magic is quite fashionable at the moment, like, or it has been for some years already. Like, of course, the fact that we are here, it's one proof for that, and also if we see, it's not only in sort of magic, but it's also like in science. There have been scientific articles that are somehow related to magic during the past perhaps 5-10 years. It's been published more than ever before. And also magic has been used in performing arts a lot. So like there's a lot of, like, I think in France there's probably like 200 companies that are using magic these days, and different performing arts. Why is it so? Like, why are people suddenly again interested in magic?
Well, I think magic has always have that potential, and it surfaces when this epiphenomenon happen. For example, one of the books that has, like, I don't know, 10-12 years now, which is called Sleight of Mind. It's a movement of neuroscientists in America and then around the world, where they decided, they came to terms with the fact that magicians know more about the human brain than scientists. So they decide to use magicians. Why do magicians know? Well, it's very simple to understand. Because magicians need to control the attention and know exactly where are the flaws of the moments where we think we are paying attention and we are not. And this is all about it has everything to do about the way our brain works and the way we erase some things of what happened around us and just focus on some things. That certainly put magic and across the globe. There was a movement of suddenly dozens of universities of hiring magicians to do eye tracking, of spectators while they were performing to see where people, where were they looking at this moment when this word is said or when that movie is done, all of that. I think there's something that makes magic more attractive than any other art form in the world. I know this is a big statement. But that's why it is so attractive. More than dance, more than theater, more than writing, more than films, more than anything, you name it. And I'll tell you why. It's very simple. We didn't invent it. The thing is that for almost every art form, you need to have a pre-knowledge in order to understand. Not with magic. So how is that real in writing and music and movies? Well, it might be a great Polish book. If I don't know how to read Polish, I cannot read it. Now, magic appeals equally to a 5-year-old than it does to a 90-year-old person. And of course, I'm cutting corners in order to make this bold statement. I don't believe it fully, but it's just to grab your attention. But and somehow to emphasize why magic is so easily popular when done properly. The problem it has, it's from home. And this goes back to what I was saying, because it's so easy. And you can hide, you can have zero talent and still get appreciation. It attracts people without talent. Because look at me. I mean, I could not play football, I cannot sing, I cannot dance. So yeah, I found myself in magic. And yeah, I'm saying this in a jokey way, but it's true. There's a lot of true in this. So it's how do you combine this incredibly attractive area that appeals across the board to every humankind? It doesn't matter what's your language, it doesn't matter what's your background, it doesn't matter what your age, you will still get the feeling of astonishment across. With the other thing that is making sure that there are more good magicians than bad magicians. That's the problem.
I think that when I started working with magic like 20 years ago in France, magic was not so popular in this moment. And actually it was even frowned upon by a majority of the cultural structures in France. It has this very bad stereotypes of musical poorly written and staged tricks, and it was very complicated for us with New Magic to come with the word magic in a program, in an official program of a theater. So I remember very well in 2007 we presented a magic show in the Théâtre National de Chaillot, which is an important place for contemporary dance in Paris. And it was a magic show, so we wanted to print magic show like Compagnie 1420. And the directors, they wouldn't let us. They said, no, you have to say it's dance, or you have to say it's circus. Yes, circus, no, dance is better. Or maybe say stage theater or visual theater or something like this. So we had to convince them that magic was a beautiful word and that people were going to be interested and curious with this word. And finally, they accepted, and it was a huge success. And nowadays, I think it's completely strange when I tell this story to magicians. They don't believe me, because you're right, Kale, magic is very popular today. But I think it's not. It has not been the case during the 20 years. It's been like, yeah. And I don't know why exactly. Actually, I would say that in France, this movement of opening and broadening the circle of magicians with inviting other artists has been a very powerful tool to develop the taste of magic that has been lost for some times, maybe between the 1980s and the 2000 years. We were like not that much interested in magic in France anymore, I would say. But now it's different, maybe because of all the work that has been done for formation or creating workshops, creating classes of magic, creating places where you could teach magic to people coming from completely different backgrounds. And also within the field of magic, like all the work, incredible work that Luis is doing to create an emulation about technical stuff and about artistic movement in magic has been very helpful to recreate this taste for magic.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's also for me. I've been thinking of the times of people also searching some kind of like balance between the technology and perhaps magic has some kind of atmosphere of spirituality or unreal that is also something that can be part of the interests. I don't know, but let's talk a little bit. I think our time is almost finished, but I would love to hear your dreams. If we think about the future of magic, what would be your dream future of magic? Let's say like 10 years. What would be the world or your work or?
Well, I hope that in 2010, 11, and 12, I was part of a group. Valentin was part of it as well. That created the Essential Magic Conference. And the Essential Magic Conference was an idea of mine, David Britland, and Marco Tempest, and we did it here in Portugal at our studio, and for 3 years. And for 3 years, we had in each year 33 of the most amazing magicians alive around the world, giving back in a kind of a TED Talk, streaming, yes, 12 years ago we were streaming in 720p, 3 days, 74 countries, because we believed that the future of magic is based on 3 words: learn, share, and collaborate. And these 3 words, they have huge roots in whatever might be the future of magic. You need to learn. You need to know that the wheel has been invented, so you can move on and invent the motor. Because when people don't learn, generations and generations, they reinvent the wheel and they think they are great. So it's good to learn. It's good to share, because otherwise there's no development. And from collaborations is where development can really appear. So we try to, in a way, convey these 3 words during these 3 years, because I personally believe in them. You need to learn, share, and collaborate every day of your life. And if everyone thinks along these lines, I believe that the future of magic will be very bright. There's no other chance.
Beautiful answer.
I think that maybe we need help for developing the future of magic. We need more and more places dedicated to magic, places where we can share and collaborate and hopefully learn also from each other. I think it's a common tendency for artists working in magic right now. Like Luis, you created your own place to invite other magicians to rehearse, to create your shows, your illusions. We did in the company 1420, we did also, we created a theater especially dedicated to magic in order to invite other companies that cannot find any place to rehearse or to experiment with magic in this specific theater. Kalle, you're also a magician, and you did more or less the same. You're working on it currently. I can quote other magicians doing the same, like Jan Frisch in France. He created his own theater/truck, where he can both rehearse, invite other companies to rehearse and practice and perform his shows. So this is, I think, a common need we all share, and the future of magic will be maybe related to our capacity to answer this need to find and to make places especially dedicated to magic, just like circus needed places to learn and share and collaborate in the 80s. Magic is still waiting for that kind of places for now, and this is going on. So I'm also I have hope that it will be possible. And this Better Circus actually program is a big step toward the recognition of magic as an art form, a contemporary art form that is in need of support in order to flourish as any other art form has.
Thank you. I think that was a beautiful way of finishing our talk for today.
There one question from
Yes,
the audience.
please. Let's have a few questions.
Hello. My name is Zana Esther. Thank you for insightful talk. Well, I believe in magic. But my question, I would love to take small idea, which, well, one of the ideas, I understand there's a diverse aspect we could go one another. But if we are thinking about, well, first of all, I think we live, we live in a world which is actually calling, we call it emergency at the moment, which asking that we need to change behaviors and so on. And following the idea that magicians take dreams of the human until the moment humans kind of make these dreams happen by themselves, let's go in this way. How do you think does magic could change behavior of the humankind for the good of our future and sustainability? And we know all the causes which we have caused as a people. And another point is about how do you see the role of magicians and this area of art playing in specifically related about the changes in the world and in the system itself. Thank you. It's about the future.
It's a very tough question, but you knew it, right? I think, well, I would mention this experience of practicing magic amongst other population from other places than this one. So magic has to see a lot with the definition of reality. And this definition is not a universal definition, even if we tend to believe that it is. Like levitation should be completely magic for everyone in the planet, because no one can actually levitate on the planet, but it is not like this, because the actual definition that the whole society makes of what is real and what is not, of what is possible and what is not possible, is the key to creating magic and this emotion of something is happening, something is strange, something is not normal in what I am seeing. So maybe what you are saying is that somehow this reflection about how do we define as a collective what is reality could be inspired by the way that other societies are seeing the world and are defining their own reality and making a collective living out of this definition of reality. That would be my magician/anthropologist answer to your question.
I don't have a better answer, because yes, it's a question that we could all sit together and try discussing throughout the day, and still not finding answers. I believe that again the secret would be in collaboration. I think would be if a group of people that is more aware of the problem is aware also that magicians can help by in a performing way help raising attention and create the change of mind that is necessary. I think we should all sit at the table and put stuff there, collaborating and making sure that that communication-wise, concept-wise, content-wise, visual-wise, final product-wise, it would be effective. And yes, I think it would be a great challenge to do that. And I am very sensitive to the different perspectives as well, because like many years ago, 20 years ago, I went to do a charity show in Mozambique, where I was born, for the Red Cross, and I asked them, I would love to see where the money is used, and say, oh yeah, you told us that, so we will take you. So when is a good day? And they said, oh, I don't know, we have maybe next Thursday morning. And this was like Monday. Yeah, next Thursday morning we go. So 2 cars came, me and my team, we drove for 3 hours. We went to the jungle, as we would call it. And when we arrived there, there's a big tree, and there's like 100 people sitting around the tree. So there is a translator, and the guy says, oh, these people are coming here to raise money, and they are a magician. So I guess he was saying this because I didn't understand what he said, but there was one person stood up and said something in a weird language as well, and then he translated, and the question was, what's a magician? Aha. So I was not prepared. So I used the help of the translator, and I got stones, and I did things that we usually would do with coins or paper napkins, and I did them with stones. And I could see, I have pictures of all of this, I could see the astonishment face on this person. So even when communication is cut by definition, they don't even know what I do for a living, let alone me starting to communicating that is important this or important that. So there's this huge barrier, but magic was able to immediately, a few minutes later, have this old lady smile. 2 things happened after this. Was one of them, what seems to be the oldest guy with the stick, stood up and started jumping around with the stick, and the translator immediately told me, don't be scared, this is a way of saying thank you. It was like a special manifestation. Then we said goodbye, we went to the cars, and they kept repeating a word that I don't remember what was the word, but I do remember what I asked the guide about the meaning of that word. And the only thing they were saying was over and over again to repeat the word water. So if we take this, we can substitute this group of people that we are having difficulties in communicating with, was me understanding what was the problem. The problem was that they did not know what I did for a living, and coming up with a solution in order to convey that information to go around. I think magic can be useful on that. I think magicians cannot do it alone, but they should certainly be used in their capacities to help on bigger problems that individual sectors are clearly not being able to sort out. So thank you for your question and for your hope.
Is there still another question? I don't know. Bruno? Sure, yeah.
I will try to make it short. And
yes or no?
this will not be possible. Actually, my question is it's about, we see that magic is a there is this slightly different characteristics from other arts, and one of them is that sometimes the spectator feels a kind of competition with the magician. This is because of some of our ways of leading with what is reality and what is not. So it's kind of, he's trying to fool me, so I will try to figure it out. And this is a very interesting point for me in magic. I feel that in a performative way, like Valentina was saying, when we create a show that we are creating a narrative, this can be maybe a way of taking this competition out and using the power of magic, that what is real and what is not, to just bring the experience a bit more pleasant for everybody. So my question, to be very simple, is how do you deal when you face this kind of interpretation from the audience, even when you are not intending to?
Well, this is a very specific to magic, but I think we already answered this question partly. It's maybe just a question of how you write your performance. Are you making it a challenge for the audience? Are you basing your emotions only on the power of I know something that you don't know, which can be very challenging for many spectators. I think if you rely only in this idea that you know something as a magician that your spectators don't know about, this will happen. This kind of complex relationship with the spectator will happen. Some, let's say, half of the spectator will fall into the spell and let themselves be amazed by the illusions, and another part of the spectators will try to fight and to challenge the magician. And it's a very fun idea we had with Jan Frisch and Bebel, who is a famous street magician, an excellent magician. He's performing street magic since like decades in Paris and all around the world. And he somehow manages to never have these difficulties. He works on very tough neighborhoods at night when people are very drunk, and horrible thing could happen to him. He could be very challenged by the audience, but he managed to create a very friendly environment. And we were saying that it's funny because sometimes the spectator, they want to challenge magicians so much that they are going to mess with their cards or try to mix it in a tricky way, or they are going to try and make it fail for the magician, or make it difficult for the magician. You would never see this with someone playing the guitar, like someone playing the guitar in the street and the spectator like taking the guitar and tuning it. Otherwise, it's like, okay, so now play the guitar and I'm watching. So I think it's basically an attitude of the magician or the performing artist. Also, I would say that it can be an interesting feeling too, to create this challenge within the audience, because it also has to see with this definition of reality, and some people not always agreeing on the audience on what is real, what is possible, it's also a definition of who has the power. So it's also an interesting point of magic, that it's not created generally by other performing artists, but I would say it's a question of how you position yourself as a performing artist and how you write your magic, what kind of emotion you want to create for the spectators.
Very briefly, I agree. I think it's a question of attitude. I think lousy magicians because that's the most spectacular thing they have done in their entire life. They have this inner dialogue of saying, look, empty box, look, elephant, nya, 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 and you don't know I did it. You see this attitude a lot. And that kills it, of course, because no one likes a smarty pants. So it's not a challenge. I mean, it's not I am smarter than you. It's like let's go together on this ride of wonder and amazement and beautiful, impossible things happening. keeping something very important in mind. What I do, it's only spectacular because it's fake. Because if it was real, it was a characteristic. Oh yeah, the guy can fly, yeah. It's just on the news one time. Yeah, he flies, that's good. But because it's fake, it's impossible, now becomes recurrently spectacular and recurrently magnetic to watch and share. And in a more pragmatic way, what I sometimes say to people that come to my shows is that you have two options. Or you will be on the chair constantly in conflict, and believe me, you will lose. Because this is what I do for a living. So you will not figure it out. I mean, don't spend your time there. I will not figure out how the phone works, even if I dedicate the next 90 minutes sitting on a chair trying to figure it out. So, first of all, you will go home with a sense of frustration. So enjoy it, like you believe Tom Cruise dies and the animal actor is a real thing. You believe that when you are in the theater. And then you go to read his bio and you go to see his interview and see behind the scenes. Do the same thing with the magic show. When the light goes out, enjoy it. Just flow with it. Go, watch it, enjoy, be amazed, smile, be astonished, be touched, be emotional, whatever. And then, because you have something recorded on your mind, you can later, as you go home, you can try to deconstruct. Oh yeah, maybe it was uranium, maybe it was a remote control, I'm sure it was over the internet. Do that, but don't come to a show for a fight that no one set. This is not a fight, but everything starts in the attitude of the performer, of course.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you, Valentin, thank you, Luis, for your beautiful thoughts. I think it's our time to go on with the program, but thank you.